Hello and welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Gabriel the Bibi Capaldi and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please do check down below that you are subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free and helps us pop up on your feed a bit more often. Sothar of the Veragaxian Dominion had never lost a battle. The galaxy trembled at his approach, or, at least, that's what he told himself as he surveyed the pathetic scene before him. Soft waves lapped against pristine white shores. Alien tourists of various physiologies lounged under colorful shelters and floating shade projectors. The stench of sunblock and sweetened beverages hung in the air, mingling with pheromones and the salt-tinged breeze of Nabara's famed beaches. Disgusting. A warrior had no business with relaxation. "Sir, I've compiled the list of potential opponents as requested." Grevix, his diminutive aide, held up a holographic tablet. The neural implants along Grevix's skull shone, showing his anxiety. A constant state for the smaller Veragaxian. "There are several Chronesian mercenaries staying in the North Wing, and even a retired Tauridian gladiator, though he's rather advanced in years." Sothar's cranial crests flared, releasing a wave of thermal energy that sent nearby vacationers scattering. The display was involuntary, a response to his growing irritation. "I told you, I'm not interested in the usual challengers," Sothar growled, adjusting the ceremonial armor that accentuated his 8-foot frame. Every scaled plate had been polished to a mirror shine that morning, reflecting the resort's sun in blinding flashes. "Find me a human." Grevix's eyes widened, the yellow membranes retracting to reveal alarmed black pupils. A human? Are you certain, sir? They're not known for..." "For what? Combat prowess? Exactly." Sothar's secondary respiratory slits flared along his neck. "That's what makes it interesting. The galaxy needs to be reminded of the natural order. Humans hide behind their technology and diplomacy, but stripped of those advantages, they're just soft, fragile creatures." "As you wish, sir." Gravix's fingers reached for the tablet. "There are 3 humans registered at the resort, a diplomatic attaché in the executive suite, a business traveler here for the Interstellar Trade Conference, and... Oh!
What is it?"
"A family, a husband, wife, and child, registered for a 2-week stay, standard accommodations." Sothar's lipless mouth curved into what passed for a smile among his kind.
"Perfect. A family man. He can't refuse the challenge in front of his mate. It will validate everything I've been saying about their species."
Grevix looked uncomfortable, his skin shifting to a paler shade of green. "Sir, perhaps we should research this particular human before—"
"Research?"
Sothar laughed, the sound like rocks grinding together. "What for? I've studied their species extensively. No natural armor, no claws, pathetic sensory capabilities, slow reflexes. Their only advantage is their oversized brains, and those won't help in single combat." He straightened to his full height, crests extending to their maximum display configuration. Several nearby alien children pointed and whispered in awe. "Lead the way, Grevix. Let's find this human and make an example of him." The beachfront teemed with vacationers, a multicultural display of the galaxy's sentient species. Pincer-limbed Arthrosians constructed elaborate sand structures, alongside tentacled cephalopods who changed colors with each wave that broke nearby. And there, sitting under a large umbrella casting cool shadows, was Sothar's target. The human male reclined in a beach chair, his form disappointingly unremarkable. He wasn't particularly large for his species, though his frame suggested some degree of fitness beneath the loose clothing. His skin had darkened slightly from sun exposure, and he wore protective eye coverings that concealed part of his face. Nothing about him suggested a worthy opponent. Nearby, a female human, presumably his mate, sat reading from a book. She occasionally glanced up to watch a smaller human, their offspring, who played at the water's edge with a crude fabric toy, no care at all for the sand sticking to it. "That one," Sothar declared, extending a clawed finger toward the male. "He will serve our purpose." Grevix hurried alongside him, tablet clutched to his chest. "Sir, his registration information lists his name as Lazar, and—" "Names are irrelevant," Sothar interrupted, already striding forward. "Only deeds matter." As they approached, other vacationers noticed the imposing Veragaxian warrior and quickly moved aside, creating a path through the crowded beach. Sothar noted the reaction with satisfaction. At least some species still recognized a superior predator when they saw one. The human female noticed their approach first. Something in her posture changed, a subtle shift that Sothar almost missed. She appeared relaxed, but her positioning now gave her clear sightlines to all approaches. Interesting. The male, Lazar, remained as he was, seemingly oblivious to their approach. Sothar halted before the human, casting his shadow over the reclined figure. For dramatic effect, he released a controlled burst of heat from his crests, causing the air around him to shimmer. "Human," he announced in the formal declaration tone used for challengers. "I am Sothar, champion of the Veragaxian Dominion, undefeated in 87 death duels, conqueror of the—" "Excuse me?" the human interrupted, lowering his protective eyewear slightly. "You're blocking my sun." Sothar blinked all three eyelids in succession, momentarily thrown off his rehearsed speech. "Did you not hear me, human? I am Sothar the—" "I heard you," Lazar said, reaching for a container of sunscreen. "I'm just not interested." Nearby tourists had stopped their activities to watch the encounter. Some were already recording with personal devices. Sothar felt his temperature rising, both literally and figuratively. "I am issuing you a formal challenge under the ancient combat code," he continued, his voice booming across the beach. "Honor demands you accept." The human squirted white cream onto his palm and began methodically applying it to his arms. "I'm a civilian on vacation with my family. I'm sure your combat code has exemptions for non-combatants." "Cowardice is your species-defining trait," Sothar sneered, performing an imitation display by extending his tentacles from beneath his armor. The vestigial appendages were rarely used in modern times, but remained impressive. "You hide behind rules and exceptions." "Dad, look!" The child's voice carried across the sand as she proudly displayed a complex sand structure. "I made a sandcastle." "That's beautiful, Lila," Lazar called back, his attention diverted from Sothar. "Very accurate shape." Sothar's crests flared in outrage at being ignored. He performed another display, contorting his body into the posture of imminent death, a feat of flexibility impossible for most bipedal species. The human simply continued applying sunscreen. "I've heard about your kind," Sothar pressed, determined to provoke a reaction. "Humans. Always claiming to be peaceful while others fight your battles. Is that what you teach your offspring? To hide behind others?" For the first time, a flicker of something crossed the human's face, a tightening around the eyes, quickly suppressed. The female reached over and touched his arm lightly. "Is there something specific you want?" Lazar asked, his tone still frustratingly calm. "Because we're trying to enjoy our vacation." Before Sothar could respond, he caught snippets of conversation between nearby onlookers.
"That's one of those stupid Veragaxian warriors,"
an elderly, multi-limbed alien explained to a smaller version of itself, presumably its grandchild.
"They used to be something to fear."
"What happened to them?" the child asked.
"Nobody knows exactly. 15 years ago they controlled dozens of star systems. Then a series of unprecedented failures. Supply chains collapsed, military outposts suffered accidents, Their leaders made increasingly disastrous tactical decisions. Within 3 standard years, they were reduced to a single planet.
Sothar's heart began pumping faster, sending heated blood to his combat organs. These were lies, propaganda spread by enemies of the Dominion to explain away their temporary setback.
I heard it was humans,
another vacationer whispered, just loud enough for Sothar to catch.
Some species say no enemy forces ever directly engaged them. Just a series of calculated catastrophes, too perfect. That's just a conspiracy theory,
someone else responded.
No single species could orchestrate something that complex. Look at the Veragaxian ceremonial markings,
the first voice continued.
He's too young to have fought in those days, probably raised on stories of their former glory. Sad, really.
Sothar swiveled toward the speakers, who quickly fell silent under his glare. When he turned back, the human was standing, gathering his belongings. Come on, Marina, Lazar said to the female. Let's try the North Beach. Should be quieter there.
Running away, human,
Sothar called after him.
Proving my point about your species?
Lazar ignored him, walking toward his offspring. Sothar followed, determined not to be dismissed.
Perhaps your female would accept the challenge instead. I'm told human females often compensate for their males' inadequacies.
The female, Marina, raised an eyebrow but said nothing as she packed their belongings with nothing but coldness in her face. Another interesting observation that Sothar filed away. For the next hour, Sothar shadowed the human family as they relocated to different areas of the beach. Each time, he positioned himself nearby, delivering increasingly provocative insults about humans in general, and Lazar in particular. He knocked over their beverages, kicked sand onto their belongings, and performed intimidating combat demonstrations that sent other vacationers fleeing. Through it all, the human maintained his composure. Though Sothar noticed the increasingly tight set of his jaw, several times the female gave her mate subtle gestures that seemed to calm him. This, too, was interesting, as if she were restraining him rather than the other way around. The child remained oblivious to the tension, happily constructing increasingly complex structures in the sand, always clutching the crude stuffed toy she called Captain Snuggles. Sothar's frustration mounted with each failed attempt to provoke the human. His species' neural chemistry was designed for combat, for confrontation and resolution through dominance. This protracted stalemate was becoming physically uncomfortable, his combat glands swollen with unused hormones. Finally, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the beach in golden hues, Sothar made a tactical decision. If direct confrontation wouldn't work, he would force the human's hand. He approached where the child played alone while her parents organized their belongings several meters away. The little human looked up at his shadow and smiled. Actually smiled at him. "Hello," she said, displaying none of the fear appropriate when addressing a superior predator. "What is this?"
"Is this your battle dummy?"
Sothar asked, pointing at the stuffed toy partially buried in the sand. Without waiting for an answer, he snatched it up, holding it high above the child's reach. "Hey, give Captain Snuggles back!" the little human protested, jumping ineffectively.
"Captain Snuggles?"
Sothar examined the crude object with exaggerated disdain.
"Is this what humans train with? Pathetic!"
With a dramatic flourish, he extended his claws and ripped the toy open, sending stuffing material floating down like snow.
"Your training equipment is as weak as your species."
The child's face crumpled, and she began to emit a high-pitched wailing sound, a distress call that turned their previous protective gaze into something else. A sudden silence fell across the beach. Sothar held the destroyed toy triumphantly, certain he had finally provoked the reaction he sought. He turned to face the approaching human male, ready for rage, for the challenge to be accepted at last. What he saw instead sent an unexpected chill through his thermal regulation system. Lazar's expression had completely transformed. Gone was the mild-mannered tourist, replaced by something simpler. His eyes, now unshielded by the protective lenses, assessed Sothar with unhidden sharpness. There was no rage there, only a methodical evaluation that somehow felt more threatening than any display of anger. The human exchanged a look with his mate, who gave a subtle nod while gathering their crying offspring into her arms. "Okay, Sothar," Lazar said, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent that made several nearby aliens step back. "You've got your duel. 2 days from now, at dawn, right here." Sothar's crests flared in triumph, but strangely, the victory felt hollow. Something about the human's demeanor had changed too dramatically, too completely. It was as if a different being now inhabited the same form. "Are you familiar with human idioms?" Lazar asked, his voice quiet enough that Sothar had to lean forward to hear him. "There's one about poking bears. You really shouldn't do it." Sothar dismissed this nonsense with a wave of his clawed hand. 2 days. I'll see you at dawn, human. Prepare yourself for defeat." As he turned to leave, Sothar was troubled by a nagging sensation he couldn't identify, something his combat instincts were trying to tell him. He pushed the feeling aside. He would put this human in his place and restore some small measure of the Verigaxian Dominion's glory. After all, what could one soft, weaponless human possibly do against the greatest warrior in the galaxy? On the following day, Sothar paced the confines of his resort suite, his claws pressing against the polished stone floor. The chamber's cooling systems struggled to compensate for the heat radiating from his body. Anticipation of combat always elevated his core temperature, but tonight, something else fueled the thermal reaction. "The human accepted too easily," he muttered, stopping to examine his battle armor suspended on its stand. "After hours of refusing, he suddenly agrees when I damage a child's toy."
"Perhaps that's simply the level of provocation humans require,"
Grevix suggested from his position at the suite's communication terminal. The smaller Verigaxian's fingers never stopped moving, constantly updating their mission logs and communicating with what remained of their Dominion's leadership. "Perhaps," Sothar replied, unconvinced. "What have you found in the database about human combat techniques?" Grevix hesitated.
"Very little, sire. The Galactic Information Exchange contains surprising few records of formal human duels. They seem to avoid ritualized combat."
"Because they're weak," Sothar said automatically, but for the first time a note of uncertainty crept into his voice.
"I've taken the liberty of setting up surveillance," Grevix said, gesturing to a hovering display. "The human family remains at the beach. They seem to be preparing."
Sothar moved to the display, watching with narrowed eyes. The human male had established a makeshift workout area on the sand, using pieces of driftwood and other beach debris to create primitive warm-up equipment. As Sothar watched, Lazar performed a series of one-armed push-ups while casually conversing with his mate, who stood nearby with a timing device. 87, 88, Marina counted, her voice picked up by the surveillance drone's sensitive audio. "You're getting slow in your old age." Lazar laughed, switching arms without breaking rhythm. "Blame the gravity. Nabara is 1.2 Earth standard." Something cold slithered through Sothar's digestive tract. The human was performing strength exercises that would challenge even a Verigaxian, and doing so with apparent ease. More disturbing still was his comfort with Nabara's gravity. "Zoom in on the female," Sothar ordered. The image shifted, focusing on Marina. She appeared relaxed, but Sothar's trained eye caught the subtle signs, the perfect balance of her stance, the way her gaze continuously swept their surroundings, the barely perceptible bulge of a concealed weapon beneath her casual attire. "She's military," he concluded. Or was. "Run her image through the database."
"Sir,"
Grevix sounded uncomfortable.
"I already tried. Both adults return 0 matches across all accessible networks."
"Impossible. Every sentient in the galaxy has records."
"Not these humans, sir."
On the display, Lazar had moved to the water's edge. Without hesitation, he dove into the surf, swimming with powerful strokes directly into the dangerous offshore current. Marina didn't seem concerned, though several alien lifeguards on duty had risen from their observation posts, tracking the humans' progress with evident alarm.
"The warning buoys mark hazardous rip currents," Grevix noted. "Even strong swimmers are advised not to—"
He fell silent as Lazar cut perpendicular to the current, navigating it with ease before returning to shore, showing no signs of fatigue. The resort staff visibly relaxed.
"Sir?"
Grevix said, his voice dropping to a whisper, though they were alone in the suite.
"I think we should reconsider this challenge."
"Nonsense," Sothar replied automatically, but uncertainty gnawed at him. "A few swimming skills and strength exercises prove nothing." The display shifted again as Lazar returned to his family. The child, Lila, ran to him with a small case. Sothar increased the audio sensitivity.
"Can I help, Dad?"
the child asked. "Sure, sweetheart. Hand me the parts one by one, just like we practiced." Lazar opened the case, revealing what appeared to be disassembled weapons. Primitive by galactic standards, using chemical propellants rather than energy discharge, but weapons nonetheless. With blindfolding speed, his hands moved over the components, assembling and disassembling various configurations while explaining the historical significance of each to his daughter. "This design dates back to Earth's 21st century, he explained, fingers blurring over metal components. Special forces used these for close-quarter operations. The newer models have better accuracy, but I've always preferred the feel of the classics." Marina approached with a timing device. 5 seconds slower than your record, dear." Lazar shrugged. "Been a while since I've had to field strip these particular models. They're museum pieces now." "Museum pieces?" Sothar repeated softly, watching the human handle the weapons with a familiarity that spoke of years of experience. "For humans, those would be—"
"Approximately 200 years old, sir," Grevix supplied. "Their technological development accelerated dramatically following their first contact with the Galactic Union."
Something clicked in Sothar's mind. "How old is this human?"
"His documentation states 42 standard years, though—"
"Meaning he was in his 20s when the Dominion fell," Sothar interrupted, his secondary heart rate increasing. "The right age for military service." On the display, Lazar had set up targets along the shoreline, simple shells arranged in a pattern. He stood with his back to them, the primitive weapon held loosely at his side. In a movement too fast for the surveillance drone to capture clearly, he spun, raised the weapon, and fired. Each target shattered in rapid succession. "Perfect shots, honey," Marina called, sounding utterly unsurprised. "Though that dive roll was just showing off." Lazar grinned, an expression Sothar was learning to recognize in humans. "Gotta stay limber." The child clapped excitedly.
"Do the blindfolded one."
"Not today, sweetie. I was allowed to keep my weapons, but I don't want to alarm the other guests more than we already have." Indeed, other vacationers had given the family a wide berth, though Sothar noticed many of them watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to what appeared to be respect.
"Sir,"
Grevix said, his voice quivering slightly,
"I've been reviewing historical records of the Dominion's fall."
"What of it?" Sothar snapped, unable to tear his gaze from the display.
"There were rumors, never confirmed, about a human operative codenamed Quietus, who supposedly infiltrated our home world. It looked like a younger version of that human you challenged."
"That is a myth created to explain away leadership incompetence," Sothar replied, repeating the official line he'd been taught since hatching. "No single operative could have orchestrated our defeat." And yet, doubt continued to gnaw at him. On the display, Lazar had taken a communication device from his mate, stepping away from his family to make a brief call. The drone's audio couldn't capture the content, only the quiet, authoritative tone. Whatever the human said had immediate effects. Within minutes, a resort manager approached the family, offering profuse apologies and what appeared to be accommodation upgrades. Shortly thereafter, a passing military vessel changed course, taking up orbital position above their location. Coincidence, Sothar told himself, though his commander's training suggested otherwise. As night fell on the beach, the human family showed no signs of anxiety about the coming duel. They dined together, laughed and chatting, as if tomorrow were just another vacation day. The child still appeared upset about her destroyed toy, but Lazar had gathered the scattered stuffing and was showing her how to repair it, his large hands moving with surprising gentleness over the torn fabric. "They're not afraid," Sothar realized aloud. "Not of me, not of the duel, not of anything."
"Sir, I've been analyzing the human's behavior patterns against known combat profiles,"
Grevix said, finally looking up from his research terminal.
"He matches none of the standard recreational fighter templates. His movements, they are different."
"What are you suggesting?" Sothar demanded, though he already knew the answer.
"I believe we may have inadvertently challenged someone far more dangerous than a civilian tourist."
Sothar deactivated the surveillance display with a sharp gesture. "It doesn't matter. I am Veragaxian. We do not withdraw challenges once issued." He turned to his armor stand, running clawed fingers over the ceremonial engravings. "Besides, I've defeated 87 opponents in death duels. What's one more?" Grevix looked as if he wanted to say more, but wisely remained silent. After dismissing his aide, Sothar attempted his pre-combat meditation ritual, settling onto the floor into the traditional pose. His species had evolved as ambush predators, designed to spend long periods in motionless concentration before explosive bursts of heat and action. The discipline had served him well in past duels. Tonight, however, concentration eluded him. His thoughts kept returning to the human's calm acceptance of the challenge, to the military vessel now orbiting overhead, to the gaps in the official records about humanity's role in the Dominion's fall. He rose and moved to the window, staring out at Nabara's night sky. The stars burned cold and distant, reminding him of the human's eyes when he'd finally accepted the challenge, calculating, assessing, devoid of fear or anger. Sothar turned to his reflection on the polished surface of his armor. The face that looked back at him was that of a warrior, scaled, crested, evolved for combat over millions of years of natural selection. No soft-skinned mammal could possibly defeat him in direct physical confrontation. The very idea was absurd. And yet, as he prepared his body for the coming battle, applying the traditional oils to his scales and reciting the ancient warrior mantras, Sothar could not shake the cold certainty that he had made a terrible mistake. "It doesn't matter who he is," he told his reflection firmly. "Tomorrow he bleeds like any other creature." But as he settled into his sleeping chamber, waiting for his body's temperature to drop for the night cycle, Sothar found himself dreaming, not about whether he would win the duel, but if he would survive it. The sun of Nabara had barely crested the horizon when Sothar arrived at the designated combat area. Dawn painted the beach in golden hues, the water still and mirror-like in the early hour. During the night, someone had prepared the battleground as he had instructed. An oval clearing in the sand marked the traditional Veragaxian symbols etched deeply into the ground. Ceremonial standards bearing Dominion battle flags fluttered in the gentle morning breeze. Sothar felt a momentary surge of pride at the sight. It was a reminder that despite their empire's fall, the galaxy still remembered their warrior culture. A small crowd had already gathered behind hastily erected barriers. Various alien species jostled for position, some drinking morning beverages, others taking pictures with personal devices. Resort security maintained a perimeter, their expressions suggesting discomfort with sanctioned combat on their property. News drones hovered silently overhead, recording from multiple angles. Sothar had made sure to alert the interstellar press about the historic duel. Whatever happened, the galaxy would witness a Veragaxian warrior in battle once more. Final equipment check, sir, Grevix asked, inspecting the ceremonial battle armor. Sothar extended his arms, allowing his aide to verify the integrity of each scaled plate. The armor was largely ceremonial. Verigaxians relied primarily on their natural defenses, but tradition demanded its use in formal duels. "What's the latest surveillance?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Grevix hesitated.
The human family arrived at the beach 30 minutes ago. They set up beach chairs and a cooling unit, with snacks.
Sothar's crest flared involuntarily.
Snacks? They treat this as entertainment?
The female appears to be recording the proceedings on her own device. The offspring is holding the repaired toy and seems excited.
This casual approach to what should be a solemn occasion further unsettled Sothar. Either the human was supremely confident, or he didn't understand the gravity of a Verigaxian death duel. Neither possibility was comforting.
"It doesn't matter," Sothar declared, more to himself than to Grevix. "Begin the ceremonial entrance."
Quickly, Sothar launched into the traditional pre-battle ritual. His body moved through the ancient forms, demonstrating strength, flexibility, and speed. Sand flew in impressive arcs as his movements became increasingly elaborate. The watching crowd responded with appropriate awe, recording devices raised to capture every moment. The display would intimidate most opponents, a reminder of the Verigaxian evolutionary advantages: heightened temperature, extended crests, secondary limbs briefly revealed beneath ceremonial armor. He completed the ritual with the posture of imminent victory, his body contorted impossibly while balancing on a single arm. When he straightened, he saw that his opponent had arrived. The human stood at the opposite edge of the marked arena, wearing simple clothes, loose-fitting pants, and a plain t-shirt, barefoot on the sand. No armor, no visible weapons, his demeanor completely at odds with the ceremony around him, carrying himself with a confidence that seemed more appropriate for a casual stroll than a death duel. Behind him, his mate and offspring had indeed set up beach chairs and what appeared to be a small cooler. The child sat clutching the repaired stuffed toy, whispering something to it. "Your ceremonial display was impressive," Lazar said, his tone suggesting mild appreciation rather than fear. "Is there a formal response expected, or should we begin?" Sothar felt momentarily off-balanced. Most opponents either attempted to match his display with their own, or showed visible intimidation. This calm acknowledgement, followed by practical inquiry, was disconcerting.
"The challenged party may offer final words before combat commences," he managed, falling back on formal protocol.
"I appreciate the opportunity," Lazar said, stepping into the marked arena. Up close, Sothar noticed subtle differences in the human's appearance from yesterday. His posture had changed, more centered, balanced, ready for explosive movement in any direction. His eyes remained the same, calm, assessing, devoid of fear. "I'm giving you the chance to walk away," the human continued. "There's no shame in it. Sometimes the wisest battle is the one you choose not to fight." Sothar's crests flared in indignation.
"You dare offer me, a Verigaxian warrior, the opportunity to withdraw? I, who have emerged victorious from 87 death duels?"
87, Lazar repeated quietly. "That's an impressive number. How many were against humans?"
"None," Sothar admitted. "Your kind avoids honorable combat."
"Or perhaps we just have different definitions of honor," Lazar suggested. "Different approaches to conflict." Something in his tone raised Sothar's defensive instincts.
"You're either brave or foolish. What makes you think you can defeat the greatest warrior in the galaxy?"
Lazar sighed, a curious sound that Sothar interpreted as resignation. "Greatest warrior in the galaxy? You don't travel a lot, do you? I've been to your homeworld a few times, and I was not impressed." The words landed like physical blows. Sothar's secondary respiratory system faltered momentarily as his brain processed the implication. "You're Quietus." The name emerged as barely a whisper. Lazar nodded once, his expression unchanged. The galaxy seemed to tilt around Sothar. Quietus, the mythical operative blamed by conspiracy theorists for the Dominion's fall, the shadow that supposedly engineered the destruction of an empire from within, a figure dismissed by official records as propaganda, as a fabrication to explain the unexplainable. Standing before him in beach attire, looking for all the galaxy like an ordinary tourist. Rage surged through Sothar's system, his temperature spiking dangerously as combat hormones flooded his bloodstream. With a roar that sent nearby spectators scrambling backward, he charged forward, abandoning all protocol and ceremony in his desperate need to destroy the architect of his species' downfall. His first strike, a sweeping blow that would have decapitated most opponents, met empty air as the human slipped aside with minimal movement. Sothar followed with a complex combination attack. Claws extended, each strike precisely targeted at vulnerable points on a bipedal body. Lazar evaded each one, his movements economical, never wasting energy or motion. He didn't counterattack, merely continued avoiding Sothar's increasingly frenzied assault. "Stand and fight!" Sothar roared, frustration mounting as his claws repeatedly failed to find their target. "I am fighting," Lazar replied calmly, ducking under another swing. Sothar redoubled his efforts, drawing on combat techniques reserved for the most dangerous opponents. His breath quickened, doubling his motion speed and potential striking points. His body temperature rose further, creating a heat shimmer around him that would disorient most species' visual systems. Finally, a glancing blow connected, tearing the human's shirt and drawing a thin line of red across his chest. Sothar felt a surge of triumph, but Lazar's expression didn't change. No pain, no fear, not even acknowledgement of the wound. "Your species refused diplomatic solutions," the human said conversationally, as if discussing weather rather than fighting for his life. "Attacked 17 worlds for honor. The Galactic Council needed a permanent solution." "One human brought down an empire," Sothar panted, his respiratory systems struggling to cool his overheating body. "Impossible." He launched a desperate attack, managing to trap the human in a hold that would crush most opponents. Lazar allowed himself to be struck repeatedly, demonstrating inhuman pain tolerance. "That's your species' fatal flaw," the human said, his voice steady despite the pressure on his chest. "You believed everyone fights for honor." With a movement too fast for Sothar to track, Lazar escaped the hold, using the Varagaxian's own momentum against him. Sothar stumbled, his equilibrium compromised by his dangerously elevated core temperature. The battle continued, but the dynamic had shifted. Sothar's initial fury gave way to desperate determination as his biological limitations began to assert themselves. Varagaxian physiology required cooling periods after intense exertion, a weakness their ancient hunting patterns had accommodated, but that proved problematic in sustained combat. Lazar showed no fatigue, maintaining the same reaction time and strength as when they'd begun. More disturbing still, his techniques were becoming more efficient rather than more aggressive, adapting to Sothar's style with each exchange. Desperation mounting, Sothar attempted his species' most dangerous technique, the thermal surge. By deliberately overheating his muscles, he exploded with fast motion. The technique was risky, potentially causing permanent damage to the user, but he saw no alternative. His body temperature rose to dangerous levels, his spiked crests extending fully. The sand beneath his feet felt cold in comparison to his own heat. With a final roar, he lunged forward. Lazar simply sidestepped, redirecting Sothar's charge with a minimal push that sent the Varagaxian stumbling past him. The thermal energy dissipated harmlessly into the morning air. Sothar collapsed, his systems overloaded, unable to continue. Lazar stepped into his neck, pressing him but not a lot. Through blurry vision, he noticed the crowd whispering. In the minutes that followed, they dispersed, the news drones gone. Noticing that even the resort security had withdrawn, Sothar found himself alone in his defeat, leaving only Lazar's family watching from their beach chairs. As consciousness faded, his last thought was that he had become just another footnote in the fall of the once mighty Verigaxian dominion. Hours later, Sothar awakened to the sensation of cool water on his scales. He lay on the beach below an umbrella, his armor removed, his body temperature gradually returning to normal ranges. Beside him sat Lazar, offering a hydration container. "Drink," the human said. "Your species dehydrates quickly after thermal overload." Sothar accepted the container, his pride as damaged as his body. "You could have killed me at any point," he realized aloud. "That was never the objective," Lazar replied. "Your species seeks to win battles. Humans seek to win wars. We are very different." "The Dominion's fall was engineered, yes." Lazar gazed out at the ocean. "Your warrior culture was deemed an existential threat to galactic peace after you rejected 17 diplomatic missions, and your warriors disrupted 3 peaceful worlds with honor duels. I was sent to ensure your leadership's downfall with minimal casualties." "You alone destroyed an empire?" Sothar still couldn't fully comprehend it. "I created the conditions for your empire to destroy itself," Lazar corrected. "Subtle manipulations, strategic misinformation to key military commanders, occasional targeted removal of particularly problematic individuals. Better dissolution than the extinction your empire was headed toward if you had tried to pull that crap with a species like humanity." A small figure approached cautiously, the human offspring, still clutching her repaired toy. "Captain Snuggles says he forgives you," the child announced solemnly. "He says everybody makes mistakes." Sothar stared at the crudely repaired fabric creature, then at the tiny human showing him compassion despite his actions. "The Council is watching your remaining settlements," Lazar continued quietly. "There are other operatives like me, some human, some not, and many are less patient with your kind's rehabilitation. Remember that next time you consider reinstating old warrior traditions." Sothar watched as the human returned to his family, resuming their vacation activities as if the life-altering duel had been nothing more significant than a minor interruption to their leisure time. The female, clearly as formidable as her mate in ways Sothar was only beginning to understand, offered her partner a cold beverage. The child resumed building complex structures in the sand. For the first time in his life, Sothar questioned the warrior traditions that had defined his existence. Perhaps restraint had some value, not in the battles one chose to fight, but in those one chose to avoid. He looked up at the stars faintly visible in Nabara's morning sky, contemplating a different path forward for himself and perhaps for his remaining people. After all, if the most dangerous being he'd ever encountered chose to spend his power building sand castles with his offspring rather than conquering worlds, perhaps there was wisdom there worth considering.